Let's go directly to Jerusalem now and catch up with Jonathan Spire, who's the Director of Research for the Middle East Forum, joining us live from Jerusalem. Great to talk to you again, Jonathan. I've first got to ask you about the situation there, because I know you've had missile alerts in the last hour or so. Can you give us any update on the situation as it's unfolding?
Yeah, there have been alerts. You're absolutely right in the last hour. I just received them a few minutes ago on my phone, as we all do here. The fact of the matter is that, the missiles coming from Iran are ongoing. But last night, we had actually a smaller number of missiles getting through than had been the case in previous nights. Just about 10 missiles got through. There's no reports either of fatalities or even of injuries. So it means that we actually have had an easier night than in previous nights. And there's a sense that just maybe our Air Force's attacks on the missile launchers in Iran are having an impact on the Iranians' ability to launch the missiles.
That is encouraging news. Now, I've got to get your take as a respected analyst of all things in Middle East security. What do you make of Donald Trump's most recent actions? The warning to Iranians to leave Tehran, the fact that he's heading back to the White House, sending military assets to the region. Does it look like the US is going to get directly involved?
Yeah, the USS Nimitz carrier group heading for the Middle East, as well as, as you mentioned, Trump leaving the G7 early. Certainly, there's clearly a coordinated attempt to place very, very heavy pressure on the Iranians right now, and they really have been taking, a great deal of damage on every front. As to whether the United States will, in fact, come in or not, it's very, very hard to predict, of course. But, I mean, given the events of the last 3 or 4 days, we should not rule anything out. There is a sense strongly felt here that unless the US comes in, it's difficult to see how this can be brought to a conclusion anytime soon, simply because, as you mentioned in your broadcast, the capacities of our Air Force, formidable though they are not such that they can rapidly do the kind of damage to such installations as the Fordo enrichment plant to bring this thing to a rapid close. The Americans could, of course. So there is a sense that if we want this thing to end anytime soon and put the kind of pressure that needs to be put on Iran, then it may well be that American assistance is needed. And the indications of the last 24 hours are that that's by no means an impossible proposition right now.
Now, what about the open encouragement from Benjamin Netanyahu, from Donald Trump, from the Israeli ambassador to the UN for Iranians to effectively rise up against their own regime? It's hard to get a read on what's happening in Tehran. There's social media posts, but it's hard to verify them. But there does seem to be some suggestion that this is unleashing anger against the mullahs who control that country.
Yes, that's right. And there have been a number of indications also from Tehran itself, but also from outlying and regions of the country where ethnic minorities such as the Kurds and the Baluch are resident, that there is that underlying anger. And certainly among some of the political movements there are kind of calls for mobilization. Look, these are very, very hard things to quantify. A popular uprising, a revolution, bringing down a regime, are not the kind of things that you can measure or just sort of press a button and they happen. There are historical precedents for when a country or regime rather suffers a military defeat, then the people use that opportunity to rise up. We've seen that in the past. We can't predict it. Certainly, this is a regime that has very, very questionable legitimacy. Many smart Iranians I speak to say around 80% probably of Iranians reject this regime, especially among the younger generations, of whom there are, many in Iran. So there's a sense that, there's a real possibility of this, but it's hard to predict. But there are some indications this may be starting to happen. And of course, that's what needs to happen. At the end of the day, what needs to happen is that this regime needs to vanish for any chance of real productive movement forward, I would say, in our region.